Ambassador Zirax fidgeted with his ceremonial sash as the transport pod descended toward Confederation headquarters. After decades of petitioning, the Vesperi had finally earned membership in the Galactic community. As their first representative, he couldn't afford any missteps. The central chamber of the Security Council hummed with quiet energy as representatives from 57 spacefaring civilizations gathered around the ancient circular table. Species that had warred for millennia now traded pleasantries under the watchful eyes of Confederation peacekeepers. Ambassador Zirax of the Vesperi Collective announced the Chamber I, recognized for orientation briefing. The Grand Arbiter, an imposing Tellurid with gleaming scales and eyes that had witnessed centuries of galactic politics, gestured for Zirax to approach. The chamber quieted immediately. "Welcome to the Confederation," the Arbiter intoned, his translator rendering the complex harmonics into crisp Vesperi. "Before you receive the standard protocols, there is one directive that supersedes all others." Zirax's antennae twitched nervously. This deviation from the expected ceremonial speeches suggested something of profound importance. In the third spiral arm of your local sector exists a yellow star with 8 planets. The third planet, designated Terra but known to its inhabitants as Earth, is home to a species called humans. A holographic display activated, showing a blue-green world with swirling white clouds. The directive is simple. Humans are protected. We don't engage with them, under any circumstances. Zirax's compound eyes reflected the rotating image of Earth. With respect, Grand Arbiter, the database indicates this species has achieved only rudimentary spaceflight. They've barely touched their own satellite. What threat could they possibly pose to warrant quarantine? The chamber temperature seemed to drop several degrees. Representatives exchanged meaningful glances, mandibles clicking and tentacles writhing in what Zirax recognized as expressions of discomfort. Admiral Clarax of the Sentinel Fleet, a decorated veteran whose armored exoskeleton bore the marks of 17 major conflicts, tapped a weathered claw against the table. The hologram shifted to display a massive Confederation battlecruiser, pride of the fleet. "This was the Indomitable," the Admiral said, voice flanging with emotion. "Triple-layered quantum shields. Neutronium alloy hull. Power reserves sufficient to sterilize a continent." The hologram timeline accelerated. Crude missiles, chemical propellants, and primitive guidance systems approached the mighty vessel. "These primitive weapons should have been vaporized by our outer defense grid," the Admiral continued. "Instead, the missiles somehow phased through the shields as if they weren't there. Secondary explosions cascaded through the massive vessel as it listed in space." "Impossible," Zirax whispered. An elderly Xanthian academic leaned forward, her luminescent tendrils pulsing with remembered anxiety. "The humans didn't just defeat our technology. They understood it, adapted to it, and countered it using materials that shouldn't have worked. All within months of encountering our observation drones." The Grand Arbiter slid a worn data crystal across the table. "The complete record of what we call the Terra incident, classified to the highest level. You may review it once, under supervision." Zirax's claw hesitated above the crystal. "May I ask what happened to the previous species that questioned this directive?" A heavy silence blanketed the chamber. Finally, the Arbiter replied, "The Mrezin believed humans would make excellent slaves. Their civilization spanned 12 star systems. Now they exist only in our historical archives." Zirax carefully pocketed the crystal, suddenly very aware of the weight of his new responsibilities. "Remember, Ambassador," the Grand Arbiter concluded, "this directive exists not merely to protect humans, but to protect us all." The data crystal weighed heavily in Zirax's pocket as he navigated the labyrinthine corridors of Confederation Station Alpha. His diplomatic quarters felt too exposed for reviewing such sensitive information. Instead, he found himself in a dimly lit analysis chamber reserved for intelligence personnel. "Ambassador credentials accepted," chirped the security system. "Privacy protocols engage." The crystal slid into the reader with a satisfying click. Immediately, the chamber filled with three-dimensional projections, mission logs, sensor data, and biological scans of the curious bipeds called humans. 3 hours later, Xerax emerged with more questions than answers. The official record documented first contact from a respectful distance, followed by the implementation of the quarantine. But strange gaps punctuated the timeline, and cryptic references to a scientific expedition appeared repeatedly without elaboration. Computer, Xerax whispered, cross-reference Confederation scientific missions to Terra Sector approximately 300 cycles ago. That information requires Omega clearance, the system responded. Current credentials insufficient. Interesting. The quarantine itself wasn't classified, but the details of this expedition were locked behind the highest security protocols. 2 cycles later, Xerax found himself in the notorious Borderline Station, a trading post at the very edge of Confederation space where regulations grew conveniently flexible. The establishment, called the Void's Edge, catered to those seeking anonymity along with their intoxicants. "You're far from the diplomatic quarter, Ambassador," rasped the voice from a shadowed booth. Xerax's antennae twitched in surprise. He hadn't told anyone about this excursion. A grizzled Thraxian slouched there, multiple eyes blinking asynchronously, a neurological sign of severe trauma among his species. A faded Confederation intelligence insignia was just visible beneath his tattered outer membrane. "Kellamore," Xerax acknowledged, recognizing the disgraced officer from his research. "Your insight on certain historical matters would be valuable." 300 credits valuable. Kelmore's feeding appendage tapped impatiently against his drinking vessel. Once payment cleared, the former intelligence officer's demeanor shifted. "You're asking about the Terra incident, specifically the missing scientific team that no one acknowledges." 12 of your brightest minds, Xerax confirmed. "The records say they vanished." Kelmore's laugh resembled a respiratory malfunction. "Is that the story now?" "They didn't vanish, Ambassador. We sent them in after initial scans showed humans had remarkable neurological structures. 12 specialists to observe, analyze, and report back. Routine mission." "What happened?" "Contact ceased after 3 local months. We assumed catastrophic failure, perhaps detection, and primitive dissection. Standard procedure would have been to sterilize the observation zone." Kelmore's outer membrane rippled with discomfort. "Before that order could be executed, we intercepted a transmission. From the humans. In perfect Confederation standard code, which no human should have known. The message contained the complete design specifications for an improved version of our quantum fold engine. Improvements that addressed flaws our engineers hadn't even recognized yet." Xerax's respiratory rates increased. "The humans captured your scientists and extracted information. Worse." Kelmore leaned forward. "They learned from them. Collaborated. Within months, they hadn't just understood our technology. They'd improved it. The quarantine wasn't implemented to protect humans, Ambassador. It was to protect us." As Xerax departed, his communicator chimed with an encrypted message from his government. The Vesperi Extraction Corporation had secretly approved a mission to acquire human biological samples, believing they contained the key to unprecedented medical advances. The coordinates showed their ship would breach the quarantine boundary within 12 hours. Xerax's frantic transmission to Confederation security bounced between bureaucratic departments with maddening slowness. The quarantine violation needed immediate action, but his status as a new ambassador carried little emergency authority. "Patch me through to Admiral Clorax directly," he demanded of the communications officer. "The Admiral is in closed council session, Ambassador. I can schedule you for." "This cannot wait." Xerax's mandibles clicked with frustration. Vesperi Extraction Corporation vessel Genetic Frontier will breach Terra Quarantine in less than 5 hours. The communications grid suddenly flickered, then stabilized with a priority override. Admiral Clorax's weathered face appeared. "Explain," the Admiral commanded. Xerax quickly outlined the unauthorized mission. They believe human genetic material contains adaptation sequences that could revolutionize Vesperi medicine. They don't understand the danger. Intercept vessels dispatched, Clorax confirmed grimly. But they may not arrive in time. Your corporation vessel is using experimental stealth technology. Aboard the Genetic Frontier, Research Director Vel Nax watched with satisfaction as Earth grew larger on the view screen. Their vessel's revolutionary phase-shifting hull had allowed them to slip past the quarantine boundary undetected. No Confederation response, reported the tactical officer. Our stealth systems are performing beyond expectations. The humans possess only primitive detection capabilities. Velnax chittered smugly. Begin orbital insertion. Prepare collection teams for atmospheric descent. Director, interrupted the sensor specialist. I'm detecting unusual energy fluctuations from several orbital positions. Specification: unknown. They appeared dormant, but the specialist's antennae twitched nervously. Wait, energy spike. Suddenly, previously invisible platforms surrounding Earth activated. The satellite network, appearing primitive to long-range scans, transformed as hidden components deployed with precise mechanical grace. Impossible, whispered Velnax as the sensor display identified the technology. Those are Confederation defense platforms. Modified Confederation technology, corrected the increasingly panicked specialist. The design bears similarities to our standard platforms, but these contain significant improvements. The ship's communication system activated without authorization. A calm human voice spoke perfect Vesperi. Vesperi vessel approaching Earth. You have entered protected space without authorization. Your drive systems will now be temporarily disabled for safety purposes. Please prepare for escort to designated landing coordinates. Shields at maximum, ordered Velnax. Evasive maneuvers. Before the helmsman could respond, a focused pulse struck their vessel. Critical systems shut down in cascading sequence. Propulsion, weapons, and finally shields. They knew exactly where to hit us, the engineering officer reported in disbelief. The pulse matched our shield resonance frequency perfectly. From the observation deck, the crew watched in horror as a sleek vessel of unfamiliar design approached. Its hull bore curious markings, UNERF, and beneath it, United Nations Extraterrestrial Response Force. Velnax opened an emergency channel to Confederation headquarters. This was a trap. The humans knew we were coming. They have technology that shouldn't exist. At Confederation security, Admiral Clorax and Ambassador Zirax watched the transmission with growing dread. How could they possibly be expecting us? Came Velnax's final panicked message before the feed cut abruptly. Because they've been watching us all along, Clorax murmured. Just as we thought we were watching them. The Admiral turned to Zirax. Assemble a diplomatic team immediately. First contact protocols have been rendered obsolete. After 3 centuries of quarantine, we're about to meet the humans on their terms, not ours. The Confederation Emergency Response Vessel Diplomatic Overture dropped out of fold space at the quarantine boundary. A hastily assembled team of 7 representatives from senior Confederation species clustered on the bridge, including Ambassador Zirax as the Vesperi liaison. Approaching Terra Quarantine Line, announced the navigator. Standing by for potential engagement. Admiral Clorax studied the tactical display with growing concern. Where is the Vesperi vessel? Our sensors should detect it even with their stealth systems. Unknown. Admiral, responded the sensor officer. But I'm detecting another ship approaching from Terra orbit. The view screen magnified to reveal a sleek vessel unlike anything in Confederation records. Its hull gleamed with a curious iridescent material that seemed to both absorb and reflect scanner beams. Design origin unknown, reported the science officer. Material composition registering as contradictory readings, sir. They're hailing us, said the communications specialist with obvious surprise. In standard Confederation protocol format. Clorax exchanged glances with the assembled diplomats. Put it through. The view screen shifted to show a human female in a crisp blue uniform. Silver insignia adorned her collar, and her dark hair was pulled back in a simple arrangement that emphasized sharp, observant eyes. Confederation vessel, this is Commander Elena Santos of the United Nations Extraterrestrial Response Force. Welcome to Sol System. We've been expecting you. After a moment of stunned silence, Clorax found his voice. Commander Santos, I am Admiral Clorax. How did you acquire Confederation communication protocols? The human's expression remained professionally neutral. The same way we acquired your propulsion, weapons, and shield technology, Admiral, from your observation team that arrived 287 local years ago. Zirax stepped forward. The Vesperi vessel that breached your space, where is it now? The genetic frontier is secure at our Luna facility, Santos replied, switching effortlessly to perfect Vesperi language, complete with proper caste inflections. Its crew is unharmed but temporarily confined while we neutralize some rather unpleasant bioweapons they'd brought specifically designed for human physiology. Murmurs of shock rippled through the diplomatic team. You speak our language, Zirax stated, mandibles clicking in surprise. We speak all 34 languages currently used by Confederation member species, Santos responded. Your quarantine gave us ample time to prepare for this meeting. The human commander's image was replaced by footage of the captured Vesperi vessel. It rested inside a massive hangar built into what appeared to be a lunar crater. Human technicians moved confidently around it, using tools that combined recognizable Confederation design with unfamiliar modifications. As you can see, Santos continued as her image returned, we've been respecting your quarantine directive, despite having the capability to break it for centuries. However, now that the Vesperi have forced this encounter, my government believes formal diplomatic relations would be more productive than continued pretense. A data packet arrived through the communication channel. Exact coordinates on the planet's surface. We've prepared appropriate accommodations for your delegation at our primary contact facility. You'll find environmental adjustments for all Confederation standard physiologies. Her expression softened slightly. We've been looking forward to this day for a very long time, Admiral. As the transmission ended, the gathered representatives stared at each other in disbelief. Admiral, whispered the Tellurit cultural specialist, they've been monitoring our communications, studying our biology, and preparing for first contact, while we thought we were safely observing them from afar. Indeed, Clorax responded grimly. And now we have no choice but to meet them. The diplomatic shuttle descended through Earth's atmosphere, passing through wispy clouds as the blue ocean expanded beneath them. Zirax pressed close to the viewport, fascinated by this world that had inspired such caution from the Confederation. Approaching Pacific Facility, announced their human pilot. Prepare for underwater descent. Underwater, questioned a Tellurit diplomat. The coordinates indicate open ocean. The pilot merely smiled as the craft slowed over a seemingly empty stretch of water. Suddenly, the surface parted, revealing a massive circular opening that hadn't been visible moments before. Holographic camouflage, Clorax noted with professional appreciation. Extremely sophisticated. The shuttle descended into the opening, following a transparent tunnel that plunged deep beneath the ocean's surface. Bioluminescent sea creatures drifted past, casting ethereal light across the awestruck delegates. After several minutes, they emerged into a cavernous docking bay where dozens of vessels rested, some recognizably human, others with distinct Confederation design influences, and several of completely unfamiliar configuration. A welcoming party awaited them. 6 humans in formal attire bearing the insignia they now recognized as belonging to the Extraterrestrial Response Force. Distinguished representatives greeted a tall woman with silver-streaked dark hair. I am Director Amara Rayhani, Chief of Diplomatic Operations. Welcome to UNERF Pacific Command. As they followed her through the facility, Zirax noted how the architecture accommodated various physiologies without drawing attention to the adaptations. Gravity, temperature, and atmospheric conditions shifted subtly as they moved, ensuring comfort for each species. This facility was constructed 282 years ago, Rayhani explained, shortly after your scientists shared their knowledge with us. They shared willingly, Clorax asked, surprised. Indeed, once they realized we had detected their presence, they chose cooperation over conflict, a wise decision that benefited both parties. Director Rayhani led them into a circular chamber dominated by a holographic display. With a gesture, she activated it, revealing live feeds from dozens of locations that the delegates recognized with shock. Sentinel Station Alpha, Confederation Central Council, Thraxian Homeworld Orbital Platform. Clorax identified each location with growing disbelief. You've been monitoring our most secure installations. We prefer the term maintaining awareness, Rayhani corrected gently. Your observation posts around our system were easy to detect once we knew what to look for. We simply reciprocated. To what end? Demanded the Tellerate representative. Rayhani's expression softened. Initially, for security. Later, to help when needed. With another gesture, the display changed to show historical footage. A Confederation colony world facing imminent destruction from an asteroid impact, evacuation ships hopelessly behind schedule. And then, unidentified vessels arriving to assist, bearing no markings but demonstrating advanced capabilities. The Proxima IV evacuation, Clorax whispered. Those ships were never identified. We erased our presence from your records, Rayhani acknowledged. Similar interventions were performed during the Tellerate plague outbreak and the Arcturian solar flare event. We could have reached out centuries ago, but our historians and psychologists advised patience. You've been protecting us, Zirax realized, while we believed we were protecting the galaxy from you. Precisely, Ambassador. Rayhani led them deeper into the facility, where they encountered laboratories filled with technology that seamlessly blended Confederation science with uniquely human innovations. Humans don't just adapt technology, observed the science attaché. They transform it. It's how we survived as a species, Rayhani explained. Our evolutionary advantage isn't strength or longevity. It's adaptability. When your scientists arrived, they expected to study primitive beings. Instead, they found kindred spirits eager to learn. As they reached the main conference chamber, the delegates were stunned to see the symbol from the classified Terra incident file prominently displayed. You recognized our warning as an invitation, Clorax stated, finally understanding. While we feared what you might become, you were becoming something greater than we imagined. The second day of negotiations began with a demonstration that Director Rayhani promised would help the delegation understand humanity's unique capabilities. The Confederation representatives were led to an observation gallery overlooking what appeared to be an educational facility. What you're about to witness is a standard aptitude session for our junior specialists, Rayhani explained. The participants are between 12 and 16 Earth years of age. Below, 20 human adolescents sat at workstations while instructors moved among them, providing guidance. Holographic displays showed complex equations and diagrams that Zirax recognized as advanced theoretical physics concepts. These are children, asked the Tellerate representative incredulously. They're working with folded space calculation models that our academies teach at advanced levels. Observation has always been humanity's first teacher, Rayhani responded. Your scientists shared knowledge freely, not realizing how quickly we would integrate and expand upon it. A young human girl, perhaps 14 years old, approached the observation window. She looked directly at the Vesperi ambassador and greeted him in perfect high-caste Vesperi. Welcome to Earth, honored representative of the collective unity. May your journey bring mutual understanding. Zirax's antennae quivered in astonishment. How long has she been studying our language? She was introduced to it yesterday, after we learned of your delegation's composition, Rayhani replied casually. Our educational approach emphasizes neurological plasticity. The delegation was then guided into a laboratory where human researchers surrounded what appeared to be a Confederation power core. As they watched, the engineers made real-time modifications to its structure. A standard Texel 7 power matrix has been the Confederation standard for over 3 centuries, explained the lead engineer. However, its efficiency is limited by quantum fluctuation at the third resonance barrier. We've developed a stabilization field that increases output by approximately 34% while reducing radiation byproducts. Impossible, stated the Confederation science attaché. Those limitations are fundamental to the technology. The engineer smiled. Only if you approach the problem from traditional angles. Would you care to examine our solution? As the scientists explained their approach, Zirax noticed Admiral Klorax in deep conversation with Rayhani. The adaptive advantage extends beyond individuals. The director was explaining. Our social structures, technologies, and even moral frameworks evolve rapidly in response to new information. Where other species develop specialized neural pathways that become fixed in adulthood, human brains continuously reorganize themselves, creating new connections until death. This explains much about your rapid advancement, Klorax acknowledged. But such neuroplasticity typically comes at the cost of stability. Most species with similar traits self-destructed before achieving spaceflight. We nearly did as well, Rayhani admitted. The knowledge your scientists shared arrived at a crucial moment in our development. Understanding that we weren't alone in the universe provided a unifying perspective that helped us overcome destructive tendencies. The tour continued to a medical research wing where the detained Vesperi crew was being treated. Rather than containment cells, they occupied comfortable quarters while human doctors addressed injuries sustained during their capture. Your people brought genetic sampling devices designed to extract human DNA, Rayhani noted to Zirax. They believed our adaptation traits might revolutionize Vesperi medicine. I apologize for their intrusion, Zirax began. No need, Rayhani interrupted. Their intuition was correct, though their approach was flawed. We've already synthesized compounds that will help address the neural degradation affecting your species' older castes. Your crew will return with medical data freely given, not taken. As they departed the medical wing, the facility's alarms suddenly blared. Rayhani's communication device activated with an urgent tone. Director, long-range sensors have detected multiple vessels entering the outer system, reported a tense voice. Configuration unknown, but energy signatures suggest offensive capabilities. Rayhani's expression hardened. Activate Defense Protocol Omega. Alert all UNER facilities worldwide. She turned to the startled delegation. It seems our meeting will be interrupted. We've been tracking an extragalactic threat for some time. The Nexoid hive has apparently accelerated its timeline. The what? Klorax asked sharply. The Confederation has no records of this species. Because they've been approaching from outside your monitored space, Rayhani explained grimly. A threat you never saw coming, but one we've been preparing for since we detected their first scout ships 20 years ago. The command center of Pacific Facility, transformed in seconds from diplomatic venue to military operations hub. Holographic displays showed the approaching Nexoid vessels, angular constructs of dark metal with organic-looking protrusions that pulsed with sickly energy. 17 capital ships, reported a tactical officer. Trajectory suggests they're bypassing Sol system to strike directly at Confederation border worlds. Admiral Klorax's communicator chimed with emergency protocols. Confederation Command confirms multiple incursions across 3 sectors. Our fleet is scattered on routine patrols. We cannot consolidate defensive forces quickly enough. How did they penetrate our early warning network? Demanded the Tellurit representative. They didn't need to, Rayhani explained, manipulating the tactical display to show a wider view of the galaxy. They approached from above the galactic plane, a vector your sensor arrays don't monitor extensively. Zirax watched human personnel moving with practiced efficiency, displaying none of the panic such a crisis might normally evoke. You truly were expecting this. For decades, Rayhani confirmed, the Nexoid hive is a collective intelligence that consumes resources and incorporates compatible biological material into their collective. They've destroyed 17 civilizations in the neighboring dwarf galaxy before turning toward the Milky Way. A young officer approached with a data tablet. Director, Lunar Defense Platform reports ready status. Orbital fleet standing by for deployment orders. Clarax's attention snapped to Rayhani. Orbital fleet. What orbital fleet? With a gesture, Rayhani changed the display to show Earth's orbital space. Shimmer fields deactivated around the planet, revealing dozens of vessels previously hidden from sensors. Primarily defensive platforms, she explained, with approximately 30 combat-capable ships. Not enough to defeat the Hive alone, but sufficient to blunt their advance while the Confederation mobilizes. You're offering to help us? The science attaché asked incredulously. Of course. Rayhani seemed surprised by the question. The Nexoid threat concerns all sentient life in this galaxy. We've developed specific countermeasures based on our long-range observations. She transferred tactical data to Clarax's command tablet. The Admiral studied it with growing amazement. This analysis of Nexoid vulnerabilities is more comprehensive than anything our intelligence services have compiled, he admitted. You've identified weakness patterns we haven't detected. Human tactical analysis relies heavily on recognizing adaptation patterns, Rayhani explained. The Nexoid are highly specialized for efficiency, which creates predictable behaviors once you understand their evolutionary path. Clarax straightened to his full impressive height. Director Rayhani, on behalf of the Confederation Security Council, I formally request Earth's assistance against this threat. Granted, she replied without hesitation. Our vessels will deploy immediately to reinforce the Arcturus, Proxima, and Sirius sectors. We recommend Confederation forces concentrate on protecting your core worlds, while our ships engage the Hive's forward elements. Within minutes, Earth's hidden fleet launched from concealed bases across the planet and its moon. The delegates watched in awe as the vessels, sleek designs incorporating both Confederation principles and uniquely human innovations, accelerated to speeds that shouldn't have been possible with standard drive configurations. Your ships are faster than our most advanced models, Zirax observed. We've made certain improvements to the original designs, Rayhani acknowledged with understated pride. Our engineers found the initial Confederation drive systems elegant but overly conservative in their safety parameters. Reports began streaming in as the human vessels engaged the Nexoid forces. The Hive ships, accustomed to overwhelming less advanced civilizations, found themselves facing unpredictable tactics and weaponry specifically calibrated to their vulnerabilities. Nexoid fleet at Arcturus is breaking formation, announced a communications specialist. They appear confused by our countermeasures. As expected, Rayhani noted, their Hive intelligence depends on predictable response patterns. When faced with strategies outside their experience, their coordination suffers. Clarax studied the battle telemetry with professional appreciation. Your captains are employing tactics no traditional military would authorize, deliberately exposing apparent vulnerabilities to provoke specific responses, then exploiting the Nexoid reactions. Human combat doctrine embraces controlled chaos, Rayhani explained. The unpredictability that makes us difficult to govern also makes us difficult to predict in battle. Within hours, the initial Nexoid advance faltered as human ships coordinated with Confederation forces arriving as reinforcements. The immediate threat contained, Rayhani turned back to the stunned diplomatic delegation. Now then, she said calmly, as though they hadn't just witnessed humanity save the Confederation from a devastating first strike. Shall we continue our discussions about formally ending the quarantine? 1 month after the Nexoid incursion, representatives from every Confederation species gathered in the Grand Assembly chamber on their capital world. The unprecedented emergency session had been called for one purpose: to formally address humanity's status within galactic society. Ambassador Xerax, now elevated to the Vesperi High Council for his role in recent events, watched as Director Rayhani took the central podium. She appeared remarkably composed for someone standing before 5,000 alien dignitaries who, until recently, had considered her species too dangerous to contact. Distinguished representatives, she began, her voice carrying clearly through the vast chamber. For nearly 3 centuries, your directive has stated, humans are protected. We don't engage with them. Today, I propose we understand the true meaning of those words. Holographic displays activated around the chamber, showing human vessels defending Confederation worlds against Nexoid attackers. Other images revealed human medical teams treating alien wounded and engineers rapidly repairing damaged infrastructure. The quarantine was never truly about containing humanity, Rayhani continued. Your founders recognized our potential, but understood that both humanity and the Confederation needed time to prepare for integration. They were wise beyond their intentions. Grand Arbiter Vextor, the ancient Tellurit who had originally warned Xerax about Earth, raised his ceremonial staff. Director Rayhani speaks truth. The archives reveal our ancestors feared humanity would dominate through sheer adaptability, disrupting established orders. Instead, they have demonstrated they can channel that adaptability toward mutual benefit. Admiral Klorak stepped forward to stand beside Rayhani. The human response to the Nexoid threat demonstrates what we might achieve together. Their tactical approaches complement our strategic stability. Their technological innovations enhance our established systems. They do not seek to replace, but to enhance. Xerax joined them at the podium. My own people sought to exploit humans, viewing them as resources rather than partners. In response, humans not only defended themselves without casualties, but provided medical advances we had sought for generations. They answered exploitation with generosity. What greater evidence of their readiness for full galactic citizenship could exist? Murmurs of agreement rippled through the assembly. The Confederation's eldest species, typically resistant to rapid change, now found themselves advocating most strongly for human integration. Rayhani activated a final display showing Earth's proposed treaty terms. We seek neither special status nor reparations for centuries of isolation. We request only equal partnership and open exchange of knowledge, with appropriate protocols to ensure cultural stability for all species. The treaty included carefully designed integration timelines, cultural exchange programs, and technology-sharing frameworks that would allow Confederation societies to adapt gradually to human innovations rather than being overwhelmed by them. Our adaptability is not a threat to your cultures, but a resource for the challenges we'll face together, Rayhani explained. The Nexoid hive represents only one of many extragalactic threats approaching our galaxy. Together, we can face these challenges from a position of unprecedented strength. As the final vote was tallied, unanimous approval for the first time in Confederation history, Xerax found himself reflecting on his initial introduction to the human directive. How differently he understood it now. The Grand Arbiter approached the human delegation as the historic session concluded. Director Rayhani, I must confess something. The original directive was created from fear. We believed humans might someday overwhelm us with their relentless evolution. Rayhani smiled. Yet that same directive gave humanity time to evolve beyond our own destructive tendencies. Without that period of observation and reflection, we might have emerged into galactic society as conquerors rather than partners. Your caution shaped us as much as our adaptability concerned you. 1 week later, Xerax stood with Admiral Klorax at Earth's primary spaceport, watching as the first official exchange began. Confederation specialists arrived to begin cultural immersion on Earth, while human ambassadors departed for Confederation worlds. I understand now, Xerax reflected as they watched a group of excited human representatives board their transport. The warning takes on new meaning. Humans are protected. We don't engage with them without preparation. Indeed, Klorax agreed. And now we are prepared, both humanity and ourselves. In the control tower above them, Director Rayhani watched the departures with satisfaction. 3 centuries of patience had finally yielded the outcome her predecessors had worked toward. Humanity's adaptive edge becoming not a threat to galactic stability, but its greatest defense against emerging dangers from beyond. The quarantine was lifted. The warning remained, transformed from restriction to reminder. Some species change the very nature of things they touch, with proper understanding that transformation could benefit all.